Subscribe because it's free.
Ambassador Vricktal sat in silence as the council chamber buzzed with dismissive chatter. The Galactic Federation had convened in an emergency session, yet no one seemed to grasp the severity of the crisis. Humanity had vanished. Completely. Their colonies, their fleets, their people, all gone without a trace. And yet, the assembled leaders treated it as nothing more than an inconvenience, a bureaucratic oddity. The humans were unpredictable, scoffed a delegate from the Zalari Consortium. Perhaps they simply tired of galactic politics and withdrew. Good riddance, muttered another. They were troublemakers, always disrupting the balance. Vricktal's mandibles tightened in frustration. These fools had no idea what was coming. Humanity's departure was no mere political maneuver. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. He had spent decades observing them, studying their influence, and despite their species' relative youth on the galactic stage, they had shaped everything. The first warning signs had been subtle: minor disruptions in trade, delayed shipments from human colonies. But then entire sectors began to collapse. The once thriving industrial worlds, powered by human ingenuity, suddenly found themselves unable to function. Their technology, once seamlessly integrated with human-run systems, was failing. And it wasn't just industry. Vricktal had read the distress signals. Pirate raids were escalating at an alarming rate. Formerly secure trade routes had turned into lawless battlegrounds. Human mercenary groups that kept warlords in check had simply ceased to exist. Border skirmishes erupted where once there had been peace, alliances crumbling without the one species that held them together. And yet, the Federation refused to acknowledge the pattern. They were reckless. The Zrath Dominion's representative scoffed, always tampering with forces beyond their comprehension. If they destroyed themselves, that is their own doing. Vricktal knew better. Humans weren't reckless. They were curious, yes, fearless, often. But reckless? No. Every risk they took had a purpose. Every gamble was calculated. If they had left, it was not because of some foolish mistake. It was because they had a reason. The meeting adjourned without resolution. The Federation would do nothing. They would let the galaxy spiral into chaos, too arrogant to admit their dependency on the one species they had once scorned. Vricktal would not stand idly by. He had to know the truth. The ancient human-built vessel he had acquired, the SS Remnant, was old but reliable. Humans built things to last. As he powered up the ship, he felt an unease settle over him. The void ahead held answers, but he wasn't sure he would like what he found. He plotted his course. He would begin at the human forge worlds, where their industry had once flourished. If humanity had left a trail, that would be the first place to look. As the engines roared to life, a final thought lingered in his mind. If humanity had abandoned the galaxy, what had they been running from? The ship emerged from hyperspace into an eerie silence. The forge world of Taurus 9, once a beacon of relentless human industry, now hung in the void like a corpse. Vricktal had seen it before. Planets devastated by war, economies shattered by mismanagement. But this was different. There was no sign of battle, no catastrophic collapse. The planet still functioned, barely. The great orbital docks, once swarming with human workers, were silent. Factories still ran, their AI-driven assembly lines churning out half-completed starships and abandoned machinery. But something was missing. Vricktal guided the SS Remnant down to surface. As he stepped onto the landing platform, the emptiness pressed against him. There were no humans, no overseers, no engineers barking orders to machines that still ran without direction. He made his way toward the nearest control hub, scanning the deteriorating systems. The AI systems, once enhanced by human ingenuity, were failing. A group of Duraxian survivors huddled near the main factory entrance, their once proud race reduced to scavengers. They looked up as he approached, eyes hollow with exhaustion. "You are too late," one of them rasped. "The humans are gone, and without them, everything falls apart." Vricktal narrowed his eyes. This planet was home to hundreds of other species. Surely, someone can repair the systems. The Duraxian gave a bitter laugh. "You don't understand. We worked here, but they built it. The factories, the supply chains, the modifications, all human. Their machines adapted. Their engineers found solutions where our rigid minds saw none. He gestured toward a line of deactivated machinery. Without them, the system is collapsing. No one else can fix it. Vrick felt the weight of those words. The Federation had dismissed humans as just another species, but the reality was far more profound. They weren't just participants in the galactic order. They were its foundation. Leaving Taurus 9 behind, he set course for Eos 3, one of humanity's oldest colonies. The moment he dropped out of hyperspace, dread settled over him. There were no defense fleets, no orbital broadcasts, just silence. The colony, once home to billions, was intact but abandoned. He landed in the capital city, stepping into streets untouched by disaster yet utterly lifeless. Shops still displayed goods in their windows. Personal belongings remained inside homes, left as if their owners had simply walked away. He activated his scanners. No biological traces, no bodies. The humans hadn't been wiped out. They had left. But why? As he searched for answers, he found messages carved into walls, scrawled on terminals. Warnings. We had to leave. It is coming. This is not abandonment. This is quarantine. A chill ran down his spine. What could drive an entire species to leave behind everything they had built? His communicator crackled. An alert. Movement detected. He turned sharply, hands tightening on his weapon. The scanners picked up distortions, something unnatural lurking in the shadows. Then the whispering began. Not words, not voices, but a presence, a formless thing pressing against reality itself. His ship's AI shrieked in alarm, detecting an anomaly in the fabric of space-time. Vrick didn't hesitate. He sprinted back to his ship as the shadows stretched toward him, unnatural shapes clawing at the edges of his vision. As he launched into orbit, he caught one final glimpse of Eos, 3 from above. The planet was intact, the structures unharmed. But something else was there now, something that had waited for humanity to leave. And now it was free. The void outside the ship felt heavier now, as the space itself had shifted. Vrick had seen horrors in his time, wars, extinction events, the brutal realities of power struggles. But this was different. This was something he could not define. The whisper still echoed in his mind, faint but insistent. He needed answers. And there was only one place left to go. Earth. It should have been impossible. The Federation had declared the Sol system off limits decades ago, citing unstable radiation levels and environmental collapse. Yet the records he had uncovered told a different story. The quarantine beacons, the erased star charts, the deliberate misinformation. It was a cover-up. The Federation hadn't just abandoned Earth. They had hidden it. As he neared the system, automated defenses should have activated. But there was nothing. The beacons floated silently, unpowered. Even the Federation's infamous blockade fleet was gone. It was as if Sol had been erased, not just from maps, but from memory. His ship passed Mars, then the silent wreckage of former orbital stations. Earth loomed ahead. From space, it looked untouched. No scars of war, no planetary devastation. And yet, no signs of life. No transmissions, no movement. Vrick descended into the atmosphere, landing in what had once been a great city. Towers of glass and steel stood tall, undisturbed. Yet nature had begun reclaiming them. Vines crept up skyscrapers. Roads lay cracked, untouched for decades. It was a world frozen in time. Inside what had once been a research facility, he found remnants of human technology still active. Screens flickered to life as he approached. The logs were old. The last entries dated to the final days before humanity's departure. Project Deadlock. The Void-born Containment Initiative. File after file revealed the truth. Something inhuman had been clawing at the edges of reality. A force that didn't belong in this dimension. It had been humanity, reckless and fearless, that had discovered it first. And it had been humanity that built the barriers to keep it at bay. They had fought battles no one knew about. Not against alien warlords or political adversaries, but against something the rest of the galaxy couldn't even comprehend. And for centuries, they had held the line alone, until they couldn't anymore. The logs detailed their desperate decision. They weren't fleeing. They were withdrawing, not in fear, but in strategy. They had left because their presence had become a beacon. The longer they remained, the more the Voidborn focused on their reality. And so, they took their knowledge, their weapons, their people, and vanished. But in their absence, the barrier was weakening. And now, the rest of the galaxy would face what they had spent generations holding back. A final file flickered onto the screen, a recorded message from the last human official before departure. The voice was calm, unwavering. "We warned you. We were never your enemy. You thought you could thrive without us. Now you'll understand why we stayed." Rick clenched his fists. The Federation hadn't just abandoned humanity. They had doomed themselves. The ship's engines roared as Rick shot away from Earth's surface, his mind racing. The truth was worse than he had imagined. Humanity had not merely left. They had been the only thing keeping something else at bay. And now it was loose. His ship's sensors flared red. Distortions in space. The same anomalies he had detected on Eos 3, but stronger, more numerous. Then, the whispering returned. No longer faint, no longer distant. You see now, it wasn't a voice. It wasn't speech. It was something deeper, pressing against the walls of his mind, slithering into his thoughts like an infection. They were never meant to hold us back. Rick gritted his mandibles, fighting the nausea rising within him. The ship shuddered as reality itself twisted. The stars outside blurred, shifting in ways that defied physics. Something else was in the system now. He pushed the engines to their limit, breaking free of Earth's gravity well. As he ascended, he saw it, the Voidborn, not a fleet, not an army, but something wrong, something the mind was never meant to perceive. Shapes that shouldn't exist. Shadows that weren't cast by light. The longer he looked, the more his thoughts fractured. He forced himself to look away, to focus on his escape. Humanity had spent centuries keeping this thing from spreading. The Federation had never understood. They had scoffed at human recklessness, mocked their aggressive expansion, dismissed their wars as primitive. They had never realized that humanity's wars were never about conquest. They were about containment. Now that containment had broken. The whispers surged, clawing at his mind. His ship's AI screamed error messages, warnings in every language, hull integrity failing, dimensional instability increasing. Then silence. The ship snapped back into normal space. He had escaped the Sol system, but he wasn't relieved, because the damage was already done. He sent out a priority transmission to the Galactic Federation, his voice shaking. To all council members, this is Ambassador Rick. I have been to Sol. I have seen what the humans left behind. Static. Then, a hesitant reply. Ambassador, we receive reports of unauthorized travel. Explain yourself. Rick took a breath. The humans weren't just another species. They were a shield, a dam holding back a flood. He clenched his fists, and we let it break. A long silence. Then, another voice, filled with unease. What do you suggest? Rick exhaled. He had only one answer. We need to find them. He closed the channel. Somewhere, out there in the void, humanity still existed. They had abandoned the galaxy, but they hadn't given up. They had a plan. And if the galaxy was to survive what came next, they would need the one species that had spent their entire existence defying extinction. They needed to bring humans back.